Hello everybody, you are listening to the Atlanta Sports Podcast. My name is Frankie Maloof, and once again I am joined by Luke Winstel. Today we're going to be recapping the weekend of football once again. We're going to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, Georgia State, and Georgia Southern, and we're also going to be doing a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons. The game is currently in progress, so you'll probably know more about that game by the time you're listening to this than we do right now. And also at the end, we're going to talk about the Atlanta Braves as they are rapidly approaching an offseason that is sure to be busy once again. So we're going to start off with college football.
Yeah, we're just going to jump right into number 12, Georgia. This weekend on Saturday, they had the 7:30 game on SEC Network. They beat Missouri 28-27 in a game that really went down to the wire. It was a really exciting game, fun to watch, and definitely worth staying up for. Jacob Eason was, a solid passer in this game. He was 29 for 55, passed for 308 yards, had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. Very nice game from Jacob, and I think that he's only building off of what he's done so far.
Yeah, and this was his first true SEC road game. He had the game, it wasn't an SEC game in the Georgia Dome, but that was more of a glorified home game for the Bulldogs because it's in Atlanta. But this one was a test. The Missouri fans came out, they made it tough for him. It was a hostile environment, and he did well, especially under pressure in that last drive. He led the team right down the field, 80 yards in the last 2 minutes. He did a good job.
And now, here's someone who didn't do well. Nick Chubb, 19 carries for 63 yards. There's not a lot of games where Georgia fans can say, oh, Nick Chubb, didn't have a good one. I think Nick is fine. I don't think it's really his fault. The offensive line is just not opening any holes for him. They're not blocking. They're not allowing him to get that downward momentum that he thrives off of.
Well, you gotta add in here that Missouri was stacking the box. They had lots of men in it that normally, against normal team, you wouldn't have. So the offensive line had more men than they could block, which is part of the reason that we ended up throwing the ball 55 times. And it worked, but you gotta be able to make sure, because teams are gonna stack the box against Georgia. They're gonna do it because they know we have 2 running backs, not just Nick Chubb, but Sony Michel as well. He had 9 carries for 37 yards. He can run the ball just as well as Nick Chubb can, and he could probably start for almost any other college team in the country. So teams are going to stack the box. It's going to be up to the offensive line to figure out their problems.
Yeah, it's the lesser of 2 evils when a team's going to stack the box against Georgia. They're just trying to make the freshman quarterback prove it, and Jacob really did, as we were talking about. So we'll move on, talk about Sony Michel, 9 carries for 37 yards. Again, solid night for him, but the way Missouri was playing defense and the way Georgia really, couldn't handle it as well as they maybe should have. It was a fine night for Sony. Isaiah McKenzie had 2 carries for 19 yards rushing, but that really was not the story of the night. He had 10 receptions for 122 yards. I mean, great night by him, including that game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he was the go-to guy. People thought coming into this year that Terry Godwin might be that guy. But last year, Isaiah McKenzie really wasn't utilized in the offense as well as I think he should have been. And I think the Georgia coaches this year, the new coaching staff, has found new ways to utilize him, and it's really paying off for the Dogs right now. And just the two carries he had rushing, those were to jet sweeps around the edge. I know he had one where he ran all the way to the right side of the field. Then, using his nickname as the human joystick, he lived up to it. Stopped, turned around, and went all the way to the other side of the field and got a positive yardage there. So he had a good day.
Yeah, also had a nice couple returns there. Nothing big, but just chipping away and getting some good yards.
And also, I want to add something about the passing game. It seemed like, I was watching the game, it seemed like all the passes were in the middle of the field. Missouri had it covered very well on the outside. Their cornerbacks were doing well, locking down the receivers there. Everything that was working was like slants to the inside or posts to the inside. Everything was there. And also, Jacob Eason, he underthrew several of his receivers that I think could have been touchdowns in the middle of the game. And then at the end of the game, he overthrew his receivers in the corner right there before Isaiah McKenzie scored the final touchdown. So if Jacob can get those ironed out, I think Georgia could have a really good offense this year.
Yeah, the wide receivers were just outrunning Jacob. I don't expect that to really happen much this year. Jacob's got a really big arm.
That should never happen with Jacob Eason.
Yeah, I just think he was a little bit off with his timing. Maybe a little bit due to that Missouri pass rush. I mean, it really was phenomenal, especially that Chris Harris guy back there. I mean, he was camped out in the backfield.
The Georgia defense, they created 5 turnovers. They had 3 interceptions. Quincy Monger had 2 and Jawan Briscoe. They also had a couple of fumbles. They did a great job. They had a little trouble early on with the spread offense that Missouri brought out, and they were just running our defense off the field that first drive. But we settled down, good coaching and in-game adjustments by Kirby Smart. And speaking of coaching, he did some great clock management at the end. The timeout he took earlier, he spread them out well, and then he created enough time for them to come down the field and score.
Yeah, Kirby's management was phenomenal, especially very good for a first-year head coach. And those turnovers were key, especially that one at the end of the game, that forced fumble. I think it was Dominic Sanders, number 24, coming up big in the clutch there, forcing that fumble after that reception, and effectively, ending Missouri's chances of even trying to come back and win the game.
Yeah, that was huge. Knowing that your defense can come in and create turnovers, that's what you need. Now, something you don't need is your field goal kicker missing 2 field goals. He missed William Ham, the freshman kicker. He missed a 23-yarder and a 38-yarder. Now, I can give him a little grace on the 23-yarder. It was way to the right. They probably could have taken a penalty, a delayed game penalty, and backed him up and given him a little bit of a better angle. But the 38-yarder he missed probably should have been a made field goal, and it didn't look good at all. It was way left, and the spin on it was funny. It didn't come end over end like you're used to seeing field goals. The good news is he's still 4-4 on PATs. If you remember Marshall Morgan a few years ago, he missed a PAT in the Missouri game in 2012, I think it was. He also missed several others that year. So we should be okay. He's just getting over some freshman nerves.
Yeah, Ham really looked like he pulled those 2 kicks. It was not good at all. Again, the 23-yarder, his angle was just not great on that one. But the 38, it's unacceptable, especially when that puts you within 3 points of tying the game. So I just think Ham's got some stuff to work on, and UGA is going to have to deal with their kicking problem and kind of work it out as the season goes on.
So just some other quick notes about that game, and we'll move on. They had 409 total yards, and they also had 37 minutes in possession time, which was good. You like to hold onto the ball for a while. But then again, with Missouri's spread offense, they try to move, the up-tempo. That might have been part of the factor in why we had so much more time on offense than they did. And of the 409 total yards, 308 of them, as we mentioned, were passing yards. So we'd like to improve the run game.
Yeah, the run game is definitely a good point of improvement for Georgia. And one last thing with that time of possession, I think one of the reasons Missouri lost and gave up those touchdowns at the end of the game was due to the fact that their defense was tired. I think they were on the field too long, and that might have done Missouri in. So that's why, if I'm ever going to be an offensive coordinator, I would not run a hurry-up offense just to preserve your defense.
Well, the only way to win if you have such a hurry-up offense is to score 60 points and then hope your defense, which Missouri, they're capable of.
Yeah, they shredded a UGA for a little while, but Georgia's able to come back.
One other thing is that the Georgia defense let up 471 yards on offense. I would like to see that number go down some.
I think all Georgia fans would. That's not a stellar number by any means.
Well, I think Georgia they should have won that game by more, but I think they were lucky they did end up winning. So moving on, Georgia Tech, they beat Vanderbilt 38-7. That was complete domination in all aspects. I thought Vanderbilt was going to come in and give Georgia Tech a little bit of a fight. Both of them are academic schools. They're both known for their academic excellence. But they both have football programs that have been good at times. Georgia Tech has been a little bit better historically than Vanderbilt has, and that's just the way the game went this time too. Justin Thomas, 6 for 13, 136 passing yards. He also rushed for 84 yards on 11 carries. Clinton Lynch, 3 carries, 77 yards. Good day for him. And also Dietrich Mills, 14 for 58. He had a little bit of a tougher day. And then lots of other carries were split among several players that Tech put in later on as the game started getting out of hand. Then they also threw the ball a good bit today, or yesterday. Lynch had 2 catches, 87 yards, and then Marcus Marshall had the opening play of the game, 1 catch for 81 yards. They rolled up 511 total yards of offense, and their defense held Vanderbilt to 275.
Yeah, it was a good game for Georgia Tech. Again, stats look nice because it was pretty complete domination over Vanderbilt. Like you mentioned, didn't put up much of a fight, and there's really not a whole lot to add to what you said. Just not a really good game to watch, but good for Tech. It really shows how much they're improving as a team. And now they're still undefeated. They're 3-0. They get a visit from Clemson, which will be a good game for them. It's come Thursday night. It'll be interesting to see how they turn around. And also, I wanted to add, their time of possession with Vanderbilt was nearly even,
In fact, I think Tech was they actually lost the time of possession battle by a few seconds. It was very close, 30-something to 29-something. It was very close. I would expect Georgia Tech to have more time of possession because of their running game and the option offense to keep the clock rolling. But I guess when you pass the ball like they did yesterday, that would help the time of possession go down some. But look for them to try to work on their rushing game. I know that's obvious because Tech runs the ball. But versus Clemson, they need to hold the time of possession, I think, to keep Deshaun Watson and that very potent Clemson offense off the field. Also, they had one turnover. They forced one turnover, and they caused a turnover. They had a turnover. I think it was a fumble. So they can also limit that. Every team can, but they didn't do awful. All in all, Tech had a good day, and I think they're going to look to build off of that. I think that I heard Paul Johnson say something like last year, Tech was very highly regarded at this time. They were 3-0 or whatever. Then they go to Notre Dame. They had been pancaking all their opponents. They go to Notre Dame, and then they start losing. They went 3-9. This year they're underdogs, I guess you could say, and they get Clemson to come home. So maybe this will be the year. Maybe they'll turn things around.
Yeah, and Georgia Tech really, the big test will come in ACC play again with Clemson. Some other teams, I believe they have UNC on the schedule as well.
And Miami.
Yeah, and Miami, coached by Mark Richt. They're looking like a pretty solid team this year. So those are when the real tests are going to come. But 3-0 is halfway to a bowl game, and that's where Tech's definitely got to get this year.
And I think they will. No question about it. They'll get there this year.
Yeah, they have the talent and the coaching, so they'll be fine, I think.
Now, another team that's looking to get to a bowl game is Georgia State. They're looking to get to their second straight bowl game this year. They went to Wisconsin. They were 35-point underdogs when the line closed, when the game started. They put up one heck of a fight. They lost 23-17, which is 6 points. They are actually winning for much of the fourth quarter. Man, I was rooting for them. I'm sure most of you were. We got to root for those Panthers, but I thought that they had it in the bag. They had the shot at it, and they just couldn't finish. I think Wisconsin's superior recruiting, their talents, everything came into play to help them pull that one out at the end.
Yeah, and with Wisconsin, they have some depth they can rotate in. Again, being a D1 Power 5 school, being a prolific football program that they have, it's just they're going to get depth. They're always going to be getting those 3, 4, 5-star recruits. Southern, quite the opposite, really.
It was State.
State, sorry. But it's just, they didn't have the depth to really rotate in and keep the game going. Had to keep their starters in for a while, and I'm sure it really showed with the fatigue. The game was not on TV, unfortunately. I would have liked to watch that one.
It was on Big Ten Network, but around where we were, they were showing the Penn State Temple game. So I would have liked to have watched it too. I was watching it on my phone, Gamecast or whatever. Connor Manning, the starting quarterback, 20 for 29 passing. He had 269 yards and 1 touchdown. Kyler Neal, 15 carries for 41 rushing yards. He was the leading rusher. And again, we see Georgia State's rushing problems. I don't know if it's the offensive line, if it's the running backs. They're going to have to fix those if they're going to make it to a second straight bowl game. And then Glenn Smith, 5 receptions for 131 yards. Just some other game stats. They had 302 total yards. They gave up 400, so their defense could work on that some too. They also got beat in the time of possession battle. They only had the ball for 22 minutes. And then this is the one key stat that I think kept them in the game. They didn't have a single turnover. They created 2 of them from Wisconsin, which was huge. But they did not have a single turnover, which is one reason that they stayed in the game as long as they could, which is good. They got to take care of the ball if they're going to hang in there with these big Power 5 teams.
Yeah, and it's a really good game for them. I was very surprised that game was as close as it was. I'm sure people in Vegas were.
Everybody else.
Yeah. That's a good one. They definitely look to build off that. Again, getting those bowl games is key for that program to try to build their recruiting numbers up, and then we might see them turn into one of the better programs in the state of Georgia. You really never know what the future is going to hold.
Yeah, and then they could become like Georgia Southern, always there, ready for an upset. And speaking of Georgia Southern, they beat Louisiana Monroe 23-21. Georgia Southern was winning 23-21. They blocked a field goal, which won the game. R.J. Murray with the block. It's their first Sun Belt win this year, which is good. They always start off on the right foot. Now, I think Georgia Southern, they play Ole Miss this year at some point, and they play Georgia Tech too. So watch out for them. They are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and Ole Miss is, a team on UGA's schedule for them to keep an eye on, but they really have a good shot at being upset. Chad Kelly for Ole Miss turned the ball over a lot, and if he continues that, any team's in the game against Ole Miss. But some key players from that game, L.A. Ramsby, junior running back, churned out 86 yards on 14 carries, led the team in rushing, and really had a nice game there. Wesley Fields had 84 yards and scored on a 2-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter. That one ended up being a game winner. And Matt Breida, the senior running back, rushed for over 3,000 yards in the past 2 seasons combined, had 73 yards on 19 carries, and that's both season highs for him. I think he'll be building up from that. Again, almost 200 yards on 46 attempts for the season.
Yeah, and then if you remember, he is the guy we've been talking about for the past few weeks. He is the impact player that you need to watch out for. If he can continue to have a good season like he's had the past 2 seasons, I think he'll be able to this year. He'll turn it around as they're getting into conference play. He'll step it up. I think he could be in the NFL next year.
I do too, and I think he might be a very interesting draft pick. He has a chance to do what Chris Conley did, a receiver from Georgia, to really improve his stock more in the off-season than he does in-season, just due to, showing up at the combine, doing workouts like that, and really showing teams how valuable of a player he can be. So maybe look for him to be a sleeper in the NFL draft. Could be someone that you watch on Sundays in a year or two. Some other key players from the game, Yuquim Alik. He's a junior linebacker, transferred in from Florida State, had 7 tackles and a key interception. Young Ho Koo, a senior place kicker, had his career-high 3 field goals and added a pair of extra points. He helped out that offense for Georgia Southern. They had 4 trips into the red zone, only came away with 3 field goals, and lost a fumble. Almost sounds like the Falcons in the red zone, just not doing a very good job. But, kicker showed up and helped his team out.
Yeah, that's huge when you get a kicker that can actually make field goals.
Yeah, Georgia fans like us definitely know. And a credit from those 5 players, Mike Brown of Macon.com, I believe that's the Macon Telegraph, really helped us out with that coverage. There were some other games on TV that we watched instead of that one, so it was really good of him to write that article, and we appreciate the good information from Mr. Brown.
Just some other key stats, and then we're going to move on. 416 total yards. They won that battle. Louisiana Monroe only had 350. They only had 1 turnover, and they forced 2, so they won the turnover battle as well. And they also, running that spread option offense, had 37 minutes of possession, which is also key for Georgia Southern as well as it is for Georgia Tech, to hold the ball and keep moving it little by little.
Yeah, and right before we move into the pro ranks, just want to give you an update for our NFL and college football fans. The Rams have upset the Seahawks 9-3 in the first regular season game in LA since 1994. Now, Russell Wilson had a nice game, but Todd Gurley had 70 yards and really helped out that Rams offense. So a little bit of NFL in that upset and some college as we, wrap that up with Todd Gurley there, former UGA running back. And moving into the Falcons, as you mentioned, they are currently in a game right now as we're recording. They're at the 2-minute drill, leading 35-28. So the stats may change slightly by the time you're hearing this podcast on Monday or whenever you're listening to us. But they signed former Alabama quarterback Blake Sims to the practice squad. They cut running back Gus Johnson. I didn't think Johnson was going to be anything, but Blake Sims, it's really an interesting project if you remember him from the college days. More from the Falcons. This game so far with the Raiders, they settled for field goals twice in the red zone. Matt Ryan had a red zone interception. As we were talking about, that's going to be a big problem when the Falcons are having...
It always has been.
Yeah, especially with Kyle Shanahan so far. I've noticed that a lot more with Shanahan. But the Falcons have got to improve on that. We could say that pretty much every week. I think it's a safe bet. They've got to improve on that red zone offense. That percentage of field goals to touchdowns is not where you want it to be.
I know, and then Matt Ryan, it seems like it's been getting worse every year. He started off his first year, he had a little rookie bumps along the way. But then, he was very dependable. Matty Ice, he got his nickname there at home, especially. And then we get into the later years, the most recent past few seasons, he's been throwing more and more red zone interceptions, and he's had good games other than that, but he ruins the game with 1 pick or 2 picks or whatever it is that can really change the game.
So far the Raiders just scored a touchdown, 35-28, so this game might be closer than it seemed originally. And those red zone points, if the Raiders were to recover their onside kick here, get something going, score a touchdown, those red zone points that the Falcons have left on the board, again, that's 8 points from settling for field goals twice. Also, that interception left at least 3 on the board. You add that up, and the Falcons have got 40, close to 50, if not points. And there's another penalty that really plagued the Falcons. They had a 12 men on the field, and it led to a touchdown for the Raiders because, 12 men on the field on their defense. And that put the Raiders ahead 14-13 at that point. And, things have gone uphill for the Falcons, and it's going to be a very interesting end of the game.
And yeah, also, Devondre Campbell, Keanu Neal, Wes Schweitzer, and Brooks Reed, they're all inactive today. So just in case you're wondering why they aren't showing up in the game stats, if you go find those.
And that's like half of your 2016 draft class, too. Missing your first, fourth, and sixth round picks. It's a lot of players. And then Brooks Reed, a key linebacker in that rotation. And, an interesting stat from Mr. Ledbetter, a Falcons reporter for the AJC. Falcons are giving up some long touchdown drives so far this season. They've given up drives of 75, 75, 75, 92, 91, and 81 yards this season.
That's not what you're looking for in a defense.
Not at all. And some of the touchdowns today for the Falcons, there was a 21-yard pass to Julio, a 14-yard pass to Jacob Tamme with a Matt Ryan 2-point conversion. There was an 8-yard pass to Justin Hardy, a 13-yard touchdown run to Tevin Coleman, and Matt Bryant just hit a couple field goals. And that's how they're at 35 at this moment. So, Falcons offense is really showing up. 35 points, your team is in the game, assuming your defense is not playing awful.
And that's what I was expecting coming into this year. I mean, all the pieces are here. They've got Matt Ryan, who they suppose is their franchise quarterback. That's still to be determined. I think he can do it. He's got all the pieces around him. He's got Julio Jones, who could be, you could argue him being the best receiver in the entire country right now.
I think he is.
And then you've got Devontae Freeman. He is a Pro Bowl running back from last year. You also got Tevin Coleman, who the team seems to think can carry the load if need be. And the offensive line is much improved with the additions of Alex Mack, and you've got Wes Schweitzer and adding the depth when he is able to play. So yeah, the offense is going to be good this year. It's all on the defense.
And we'll run you through some stats. Again, Falcons just inside the 2-minute warning here, so there may be a couple other plays, but this is basically what you're going to see on the stat line. And the stats are just going to tell you a little bit about how the game's gone so far. Matt Ryan has had a solid game, 24 for 32, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. That's a good game from Matt Ryan. Even put that interception aside, it's a good one. Devontae Freeman, really a letdown week last week, only I think 20 yards or so. I mean, that's pitiful from a Pro Bowl running back. But he's come back and rebounded, 16 carries for 92 yards tonight against the Raiders front seven. It's really pretty solid. Bruce Irvin, Khalil Mack, guys like that shuffling in there, and Devonta Freeman, churning out 92. The pass game has really been effective. Matt Ryan's done a nice job. Julio's had his 5 receptions, 104 yards. Austin Hooper and Jacob Tamme, the tight ends, have combined for well over 150 yards. Hooper had 3 receptions for 84, and Tamme 5 receptions for 75. Good games from both of them.
Yeah, and I like that you're adding the tight end game into the offense. I'm a big fan of tight ends. I think that they can add a lot of value to the offense if you have a good one, and I think that Austin Hooper is who they're hoping will turn out to be a good tight end like Tony Gonzalez was that we had a few years back.
And Tammy's the guy that's really supposed to be a stopgap, but he's not just, settling to be a stopgap. He's being a very above-average tight end in this NFL league, and that's a hard thing to do with guys like Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham hanging out there. But Austin Hooper, again, looking like the tight end of the future with those 84 yards total. And moving on to the defense, Kamal Ishmael had 13 solo tackles, 14 total. He's really doing a nice job of tackling in that defensive secondary.
Yeah, I agree.
A little bit more. Vic Beasley got the Atlanta Falcons' first sack of the year.
Woohoo!
Atlanta only had 19 last year. J.J. Watt had 17.5 in the last, 17 games. That's an ESPN stat, but that's just insane.
Yeah, the Falcons, they've been working on the pass rush for, 10 years now, it seems. They've been working on it for at least 3 or 4, I think. They've been trying to add the different pieces and add different pieces. And I think that they finally thought they had it this year, and maybe they do. Maybe they just needed a little bit of time and a little practice to get into it. But we'll see.
this year they've got a good rotation on the defensive line. I think it will get them in the 23 to 29 sack range. 23 being, of course, the low end. Hopefully that won't happen, but it could. Just due to the fact they have a rotation, but they need that second star player next to Vic Beasley. And that may be where the Falcons go in the 2017 draft, but you can tell Todd McShay and his buddies, it's a little bit early to be releasing those mock drafts right now.
In one other stat, Eric Weems, 2 punt returns for 74 yards, so he had a good day returning kicks for the Atlanta Falcons. So any update on the score as of right now before we move on? As
of right now, we've got a 35-28 score from Atlanta. Atlanta in the lead here. And the Atlanta Falcons have the ball here, so things are looking good for them. A first down and a few knees will do the job, and they will come out with a 7-point victory. Coming back from their road trip in California playing the Raiders. That was a tough game, but they were able to pull it out.
So now we're going to move on to some Atlanta Braves before we finish up the show. And Luke, what's been happening the past week?
Yeah, well, I thought the trade deadline had passed, but apparently some trades are still going through for Atlanta.
Knowing the Braves, anything is possible. They will find a way around all of the rules in order to make trades they think will help the future.
Yeah, and these trades are not necessarily helping the future, but you never really know. They got Josh Coleminter and Joe Wheeland in trades. Now, Coleminter came from the Cubs. Atlanta called him up to the majors. And Coleminter had a nice start Saturday. I was there in person. Got a little bit of an interesting delivery when he throws. Kind of points his hand straight up in the air with the ball and then throws a nice downward motion. It's really, in my opinion, very interesting. But he pitched 5 innings, had 2 earned runs. And Joe Wheeland from the Mariners was just minor league depth, helping the Gwinnett Braves through their playoff surge, which unfortunately ended in a loss, but Wheeland hasn't been called up to the majors. So it's just interesting to see if they will. He's had some major league experience, hasn't done very well in it. That's why he's in the minors, but you never really know what could come of that trade. It could be just searching for some diamonds in the rough. Coleminter could be a project for pitching coach Roger McDowell to really fix up.
Yeah, and both of those trades were for a player to be named later.
Some more activations for Atlanta. They got Malik Smith back off the 60-day DL. He's looked okay. I believe he's had a few hits so far. Not a whole lot of at-bats yet. But Malik is really a key player to this future. Could be a trade piece. You really never know what the Braves are going to pull. But, it's just going to put that out there. The Atlanta Braves called Rio Ruiz. Still has yet to make his major league debut as of the time of this recording. He was acquired in that Evan Gattis trade. He's a potential third baseman of the future. But not really sure about that. Not sure if he really has the true stuff to be that third baseman of the future.
We'll see.
Yeah, also, Emilio Bonifacio called back up. That's the 3rd time this year Atlanta's called him up. They DFA'd him twice. I almost wonder if they re-signed him to Gwinnett both times just as a little nod to him for hanging with the organization and helping him out. He was Gwinnett's minor league player of the year. He did some really nice hitting down there. Good fielding as always from a speed player like him. But, this could be towards the end of his career, maybe his last major league stint. So the Braves could be giving him a good chance to maybe make an impression on other teams for next year. So on Tyrell Jenkins, he's a good player, prospect. He started out the season in the top 10 prospect list. I think he dropped a little bit. But he's been in the majors, had some okay starts, okay outings, but it seemed like every time he would come out and pitch, 6 innings, 1 run, or 6 innings, 2 runs, he'd follow that up by maybe making it through the 1st or 2nd inning and then getting shelled for 6 or 7.
He's very inconsistent, you could say. Tyrell Jenkins is an inconsistent pitcher. If he could be consistently good or even consistently decent, I think the Braves would keep him on the Major League roster, but we'll just have to see how that turns out.
Yeah, he'll have a full offseason to get better, keep getting acclimated to the Major League life, and he'll have a few stints in this last little half month of the season to really come out and prove to the Braves that he can be a pitcher of the future. If he has a good spring training, I could see him in the starting rotation for next year, because we all know that's going to be another toss-up, and we'll have some episodes coming on that in a couple months.
A.J. Przinsky, he was transferred to the 60-day DL. This probably ends his season, and it also probably ends his career. He's going to retire, most likely, after the end of the season. So it's been a good career for him, and the Braves just happened to be the lucky people that got the end of his career. He was a good catcher. The Braves are still looking for a catcher.
Yeah, they've got a couple in the minor league system. We talked about this earlier. I believe it was August when we had this discussion. But they've got some draft picks. Lucas Herbert, Brett Cumberland, I'm pretty sure is his name. But they're low-level players. They've acquired some lottery picks and just random trades like Cade Shavik and the Eric Ibar trade. I just think he was a lottery ticket. But they're just trying to find something in that system because catchers are expensive in free agency, hard to find in a trade, for a good price. It's just going to be tough for Atlanta to find a good catcher. So it's just something they're going to have to keep their eyes on. But Pierzynski did give the pitching a lot of help, I believe. Defensively, no. Number-wise, no. But I think the part that you can't measure by a statistic is what A.J. Pierzynski did best.
Yeah, being a veteran, being there to help the pitchers, to help them get through the tough times as well as the good times. When they have a bad day, he's there sitting there helping them calm down, calling, what's most comfortable for them to throw. Just being there as the veteran leader, I guess you could say, is another thing that he was good at.
Yeah, my favorite memory of A.J. Pierzynski that I've heard about, and of course I don't know him personally, but from newspaper articles and things like that, was earlier this year with Aaron Blair. Blair had thrown 2 straight walks, again struggling. He was up with the Major League Club yesterday, but I don't believe he's been reinstated off the 15-day DL. But Pierzynski told Blair, I'm not going to catch another pitch until you throw a strike. And then Blair finished off that inning with 2 strikeouts, came back out, and didn't allow a run for the rest of the game. And I just think that's how valuable Pierzynski is to these young pitchers. And I wouldn't mind if Atlanta were to pull him back in to be a coach in these next couple of years, just because I think he's always a positive influence on that team.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll be getting into more on him and the rest of the Braves later on as the offseason approaches. More trades will happen. So thank you for listening to the Atlanta Sports Podcast. That brings us to the end of our show today. It is episode 12. We are well underway here. Please tell your friends, if you know anybody that likes Atlanta sports, whether it be the Braves, the Falcons, and the Hawks, or whether it be the college teams around the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia, let them know. Tell them our website, atlantasportspodcast.com. You can always find us there. You can contact us there if you have any questions or suggestions. You can also follow us on Twitter at ATL Sportscast. We always appreciate that. You can stay up to date on the latest news around the city of Atlanta. And you can also find us on Google+. You can just search Atlanta Sports Podcast. We should show up there. And remember, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or just on our website, on Twitter. You can find us there. So we'll hope to see you next week with another show.